I'm not going to waste your time. I have some start-sit options for Week 6, or in other words, some trick or treat players for this weekend. Drop any additional players or questions down in the comments. I will answer every single question as quickly as I possibly can. But without further ado, this is the Anomaly Podcast. Let's start off with a recap. Starting off here with a recap, and we killed it last week in Week 5, as you see on your screen, most of it is green. You know, whether if I said to start or sit a player, I think 8 of these 12 players I gave you guys were on the right side of things. So I at least know a little bit of what I'm talking about. You can trust me a little bit if you're new to the channel. But without further ado, again, 8 right, 2 shakies, and 2 wrongs. But here at the quarterback position, we're going to start off with Joe Burrow. And Burrow is back, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I will admit that last week I said to sit Joe Burrow. But I had a disclaimer last week that was only until he started to look like himself again. Well, he answered that call and he looks like himself. 317 yards, 3 touchdowns, but most importantly, he was able to move again. That calf looked better than ever, and yet again, he looks, in my opinion, like the second best player in football. He has a tougher matchup this week against the Seahawks, no doubt. A team that can generate a lot more pressure than a team like the Cardinals. So understand that the floor may be low for Joe Burrow this week, but Burrow looks like Burrow, and if that is the case, I'm going to start him each and every week. So Joe Burrow start this week after having his best week on the season. Deshaun Watson, another quarterback here. I'm going to sit him this week as the Browns had a bye last week, and we might as well have another one this week as we're playing San Francisco. Deshaun Watson, he remains day-to-day with a rotator cuff contusion, and reports say that he's barely throwing the ball at practice all week. If he is able to go Sunday against the Niners, he'll be treated with one of the best defenses in the NFL, right? He's going to have to face maybe the best team in the NFL this upcoming weekend, as San Francisco gets pressure at the 7th highest rate in the NFL. And on the flip side, Deshaun Watson, he has the 3rd lowest completion percentage against pressure this season. So tough matchup for the Browns, whether Watson is healthy or not. I would sit him regardless of his health, but this is also why you pay a quarterback $230+ million. So as a Browns fan, hopefully he proves me wrong. Why not? Let's double down. I'm also going to sit David Njoku this week in that tough matchup against the Niners, as David Njoku, he had his best game of the year the last time we saw him 2 weeks ago. He had just over 10 fantasy points in a full PPR, but that game was also without Deshaun Watson. David Njoku has scored less than 7 fantasy points in every game that Watson has been starting, dating back to last season. David Njoku has shown so far to basically have a low floor and no ceiling when it comes to fantasy production. I won't expect that to change here against the Niners, who have allowed the 6th fewest yards to the tight end position and the 7th fewest fantasy points to also the tight end position. So a tough matchup, questions at the quarterback position. Sit David Njoku this week if you can. But another guy here in that matchup on the flip side, we're going to start Brock Purdy. Against maybe the best defense in football last week in the Dallas Cowboys. Brock Purdy answered the call. He threw for 250+ yards, 4 touchdowns. I think he had 26 fantasy points, which was, of course, his season high. He has now averaged 22.5 fantasy points over the last 3 weeks. And I know the Browns are a tough matchup on paper, but so are the Cowboys. And at this point, given the quarterback situation there in Cleveland, like I mentioned, you have to stick with Purdy. You have to start him if you have him, of course, unless you have an elite option like Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, and that crew. But again, let's double down on this game. I'm going to start George Kittle in this game, and excuse the quality of that image. I just had to use it for this video. But George Kittle's been off to a rough start this year, excluding last week. He's only averaging 4.5 fantasy points a game this season. But again, last week happened, and it's, just like many other tight ends, the highs are high, and that is kind of the MO of George Kittle. The highs are highs, but the lows are definitely super low. You just kind of have to live with it. You have to bank on the talent of the player, and I think we're all comfortable doing that with a player like George Kittle on a weekly basis. Now, I know this week brings a tough matchup against the Browns, but again, this game will get out of hand early. As a Browns fan, I will say, I don't expect us to have a chance. It's going to get out of hand early, especially given the quarterback situation here in Cleveland. So you just have to hope that George Kittle can find his way into the end zone early in the matchup. At the running back position, let's transition to Miles Sanders. He's still rehabbing from his hip/groin injury, and as you can see with that screenshot, he's had 2 very down weeks back to back. I said to sit him last week, and hopefully you did, because he only had 7 carries and 1 target. this is also telling us that that injury is more severe than it was originally, I guess, reported. So something is clearly not right there with Miles Sanders. And not to mention, over the last couple of weeks, Chuba Hubbard's gradually been getting more and more involved in this offense. So due to the inconsistent play and due to this mystery injury that Miles Sanders has, I would sit him yet again this week until he finally gets back to full health. Another guy here is Rachaad White, and I'm going to sit him as well this week, as he had a big game against the Bears in Week 2. But in the other 3 games this season, he's only averaged about 8 fantasy points per game, which is okay. It's just not going to win you your weeks. So Rachaad White is getting volume, don't get me wrong, but he still looks like he's very matchup dependent. And the Lions this week are his opponent, and that's the opposite of a favorable matchup for the running back position. The screenshot says it all there, as the Lions have the 3rd best rush defense in the NFL, the 5th best total defense here in the NFL. So the last time I doubted Rachaad White was, of course, Week 2 when he went off against the Bears. So do with that info as you'd like, but I'd play it safe here. I would sit Rachaad White if you can against a very tough Detroit Lions defense, the same defense that shut down Miles Sanders last week. Alvin Kamara, I'm going to start him this week, as I expect this momentum to continue, as he's yet again made himself a must-start running back, as he's the running back 7 throughout the last 2 weeks, and the only 2 weeks he's played this season. And in the first game back, 2 weeks ago, the Saints were down big, and Kamara showed his versatility because he had 14 targets in that game, of course having 21.5 points or so. And then in last week's game, the Saints were up a lot of points. Kamara also showed his versatility with getting 22 carries on the ground and finding the end zone. So he is so versatile, and now he gets the Texans, who have allowed the 7th most fantasy points to the running back position this season. Kamara, doesn't matter if it's through the air or on the ground, the production will be there. But again, don't expect 20 plus points each and every week. I still think Kamara is a start against the Texans. Jordan Addison at the wide receiver position, as Jordan Addison, of course, saw increased volume after Justin Jefferson went down with his injury, and that should continue now that Jefferson is on IR. As I had Addison as a start this week, regardless of the Jefferson news, but now, very clearly, he is a must-start, as the Bears have allowed the 3rd most touchdowns to wide receivers, and they are in the top 3 in yards allowed to the position this season. They give up a lot of points weekly. We know that for the Bears. And their offense, if it is playing better, if last week was a turning of the page and the Bears are now a legitimate offense, this has a potential to be a high-scoring matchup with the Vikings offense. And who knows, maybe this opportunity for Addison, with Jefferson out, though we don't want to see injuries, maybe this can save my Rookie of the Year prediction and Addison can actually turn things around in the right direction, maybe compete with Puka at this point. Devontae Smith, and we'll make this one quick. I had this question over on my Instagram. And again, we'll make this quick. It's sure, he only had 1.5 points last week. Definitely his worst week on the season. And sure, he's also playing a great cornerback duo here in Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed on the Jets. But I've said to sit multiple wide receivers in this exact matchup all year against this the Jets secondary, But there's levels to this. There's levels to the wide receiver position. And for example, I said to sit a guy like Courtland Sutton. Devontae Smith is not Courtland Sutton. He's miles and miles ahead, tiers and tiers above. As let's not forget, this is a former Heisman with an MVP level quarterback in Jalen Hurts. Devontae Smith is a must start each and every week, regardless of your wide receiver, depth, right? Plus, the pattern between AJ and Devontae this year tells us that it's now Devontae's turn to retake over and be the number 1 in this offense for at least 2 weeks. So, Devontae Smith, we'll make this one quick, definitely a start this week against a tough Jets secondary. The final receiver we want to talk about on today's video is scary Terry McLaurin, and the screenshot in the middle of your screen says it all, as A.J. Terrell, the cornerback for Atlanta, which happens to be the Commanders' matchup this week, he has Terry McLaurin's number on the football field, and that's just from last season when these two teams met up. But if you need more of a reason, the Commanders threw 51 passes last week in that loss to the Bears. Terry McLaurin only had 5 targets throughout 51 passes. He has had 6 targets or fewer in all but 1 game this season, and he has only had more than 60 receiving yards once this season. So it's not a great start to the year for Terry McLaurin. And again, there's not many reasons to start him here, but who knows? The NFL is weird, and this might be the week that he goes off like DJ Moore last week. But with all the evidence that we have, AJ Terrell should make this a pretty rough day for McLaurin owners. I would sit him this week against Atlanta. And then Evan Ingram at the tight end position. Again, we talked about Njoku and Kittle. We're going to finish off here with Evan Ingram, as despite his matchup against the Colts, I still like to start here with Evan Ingram, as he's coming off of his first underwhelming game, I guess is the way to put it, this season. But he also narrowly missed a touchdown, which would have changed the landscape of his day overall. Again, that's an extra 7 points. But he's a very safe floor play this year so far. At least that's what he's showing us, as he's scored at least 10 points in his first 4 games this season, again excluding last week, and he's gone over that mark 3 times in those first 4 weeks. All of that was done without finding the end zone. So again, safe play. He's going to get a lot of volume, a lot of targets, and he remains a play for me regardless of the matchup. But that's going to do it here for today's video. Again, drop any additional questions or comments down below. I will answer each and every one as quickly as I possibly can. I love to get you guys involved. But if you did enjoy, you can drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you're still here, as we're on the road to 1,000 subs, and we can't get there without you guys. So thank you for all the support to this point. As if you missed it, yesterday was our 1-year anniversary on the channel, so we had our Week 6 predictions. So if you want to check that out, check it out. And I guess until, on to another year. But without further ado, thank you for all the support. And until Tuesday, good luck to your real life teams. Good luck to your fantasy teams. Hopefully they all win unless you're playing me. But until then, stay happy, stay healthy. I'm out.